Hey, we got the chance to sit down with Charlie Cook from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. We discuss instructorships and training and so many other different firearm aspects that you're going to love it. Additionally, those gifts are down in the description. That full online training course, pistol training course, and marksmanship course is there for you. It's a $97 course we're just giving to you for free so you can get training in the comfort of your own home right now. It's yours. Take it. It's our free gift. Also, we have those free downloadable and printable targets for you. If you can't make it to the store to buy your targets, or if you don't feel like spending money, download them, print them out, our gift to you. All right, let's jump in. We know you're going to love it. Welcome back to the podcast. We hope you're doing well today. Today we have a great guest, Charlie Cook out of Massachusetts. Charlie is the host of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Charlie, great to have you on, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. I'm excited to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Me as well. Me as well. Just like I was telling you earlier. Now, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, and I don't want to mess anything up. So, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and all the other things you're doing, because you're really involved in the 2A movement and then just Second Amendment all around. So, give us a little bit of background.
All right. Well, there's no quick version, but I spent a long time wanting to be a musician. And for the last years, I have been an instrumental music teacher in a bunch of Catholic schools. About 7 or 8 years ago, I got involved in, I was a non-gun guy. I was a gun agnostic, as I like to say. And September 11th changed things for a lot of people. And what it did for me is I had a 9-month-old son. And I was at school, teaching in a public school, and the principal had a meeting, and he said, "Listen, if anyone comes in the school that's not supposed to be here," this is before they called it active shooters or active murderer. He said, "I'm going to announce on the intercom that the eagle has landed, and that means that everyone's supposed to lock their doors in their classroom and hide under their desks." And I sat in the room with teachers, and I said, "This is not really a good idea for me, because I'm in a different building, and as a music teacher, I don't have desks." And I said, if the teachers on the first floor of the building all had guns, they could shoot the bad guy, and the teachers on the second floor can keep on teaching. And they looked at me and like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "I don't think so." So the next vacation we had, I decided I'm going to find out what I need to do to get a gun license, and I'm going to show these people what it's about. So I started the process in February of 2002. And I think by June of 2002, I had a license to carry, a Class A license to carry is what they called it. And I had a restriction on it, which meant I could only bring a gun back and forth to the range. And that was cool with me because I didn't have any guns. So I told my mother about this, and I went out to the Midwest, and I brought back a couple of, I think the statute of limitations has passed, but I drove into the Midwest. I brought back a couple of shotguns and handguns that were my father's. I joined a shooting range, and lo and behold, I'm now a gun owner, and I belong to a gun club, and I go shooting once in a while. After a couple of years, one of the guys at the Gun Owners Action League, who's the state's pro-gun group, he said, "Hey, listen, you should help us with these firearm safety education days where we go teach people how to shoot." So I started doing that, and after a couple of years of that, he's like, "Why don't you become an instructor?" So I became an instructor, and I had business cards made. And I'm like, I don't know what I need to do to be a business guy and a gun instructor, but I've got business cards and 4 or 5 guns. So I eventually got a job at a shooting school, and that led to me teaching a class of 20 people where everyone paid $100 for a 4-hour class. And I did the math, and I knew what the boss was paying me, and I wanted to go home with $2,000. You know what I mean? So I had a friend of mine say, "Start your own business teaching your own classes." So I got a Facebook page and a website and all that kind of stuff. And I started teaching classes. I eventually joined this thing called Toastmasters. And when I was in Toastmasters, I started, I had to do this manual called Communicating on Video. And in this manual, we had to interview people in a talk show format and be interviewed by someone in a talk show format, and do an editorial video, do a press conference, and make a video. So I did all of this, and I did another, like a sales pitch project, sort of a manual that was talking about selling. And I'm like, well, I'm going to pretend like I have a gun store, and I'm going to build a range, and all this kind of crazy talk. I did the same thing with the videos. I'm like, I can take these skills and maybe I can interview people. And I wanted to be a rock star for a long time. So I would watch Carpool Karaoke with James Corden, and I would see this chubby guy that's English and he's hanging out with rock stars. And I'm like, I want to hang out with rock stars, but the musician days have done. So being a gun guy, I want to hang out with rock star gun folks. So I'm going to start a show, and I'm going to call it Riding Shotgun with Charlie, and I'm going to drive people around in the gun community. We're going to talk about gun stuff. And they're like, that's crazy. I'm like, okay. So I interviewed a couple local friends, my mentor. I interviewed one of my gun instructor buddies, one of my musician buddies. And then I ended up reaching out to a friend of a friend who lived in Minneapolis, who her husband was robbed at gunpoint. And his story ended up in a book called Lessons from Unarmed America that was written by Mark Walters and Rob Pincus. And I contacted her husband and I said, hey, I'm doing the show. I'm interviewing people. I'd love to have you on the show and talk about your story. And he's like, sure. If you come up this particular weekend, it's the Minnesota State Fair, you can meet Mark Walters. And Mark Walters is from Armed American Radio. So he's like, you could probably have him on the show. I'm like, that would be pretty badass. So I went out to Minneapolis. I filmed a show with Mark. He's like, hey, come sit down, have a cigar. Let's be on the radio. I'm like, okay. The next day he called me up. He's like, hey man, that was really fun. I want to help out with this. I'm like, I don't really know what you mean, but okay. And then 3 days later, he's like, do you want to speak at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Tampa? I'm like, yes, I do. I would love that. And a month later, I went down to Tampa and I got to meet all these pro-gun folks that I've been following and reading and watching and listening to podcasts. And it's been a great ride. It really has. I get fulfilled from doing my show. It's tiring. It's exhausting. It's a lot of work, but there's a reward for it that I get that certainly money can't buy, but boy, I wish it did.
No, I can completely relate to you on that. I mean, for those that don't know how difficult it is to produce content, it's a full-time job, and depending on how much you're putting out there, and you're definitely putting out a lot of content, but you've had such an exceptional path or story I'm looking at. So you come out and I love your word, you're gun agnostic. You're not for guns, you're not against guns, which really, I mean, I think we could say that's a majority of Americans that don't own guns. They're just like, I don't hate them, but I've just never been around them and I have no desire to use them, until it was 2019 and 11.2 million new gun owners popped up between 2019 and 2021. And the ATF's like, what the heck is going on right now?
Yes, something happened. I got to say, I'm sure you've found this too. The riots were great for business.
Oh, man. It hasn't stopped, and with the new Supreme Court ruling, we're teaching classes up in Maryland right now, left and right. I have another instructor who I collaborate with. He's up in Maryland and he's reaching out. He's like, hey, can you reach out to your contacts in DC? I want to become a DC carry instructor too, because I probably have close to 100 students already asking me if,
wow.
And I'm like, man, I should have stayed in DC. Geez.
Just when you thought you wanted to leave.
I know, right? But no, your story it's almost, well, it's not almost, it is. It's inspiring to know it started with something as simple as you wanted to take steps to improve your personal and public safety. Next thing you know, you're speaking at 2A conferences and helping people really promote their personal safety, whether that be in their own home or while they're out in the streets. And then the big thing comes out is you enjoy it and you enjoy passing that knowledge around, which is obviously all over your face when you're speaking.
I do. I love it. I like teaching. There's not there. At one point I got into archery and I'm like, oh, I could be an archery instructor. I could open up an archery school and I could teach people how to shoot bow and arrow. And I'm like, you know what? I can't carry a gun in Massachusetts. I'm going to carry a self-defense bow and arrow. I'm going to put a bow over my chest like I'm Robin Hood. I'm going to get a quiver. I'm going to be walking on the store with my shopping cart, and people are going to look at me like I'm the crazy one, but I'm not. So I like
good luck proving that one, but
right. When I learn something, I enjoy doing it, I think I can pass this on to someone else. And I love it, man. Teaching classes it's great, man. It's good stuff. I've done a number of classes where people are like, oh my God, the 4 hours is over. Like, it really went by quick. And I'm like, well, that's kind of what the objective is. Like, I don't want to teach a class where someone falls asleep. And I don't want to teach a class where someone's bored because they're not going to remember stuff. So if I can say, hey, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. Hey, here's a funny story. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do that. Here's another funny story. And it just kind of keeps the pace of the class moving along.
I find that where most times people have that lull is the legal portion, right? You're going through all the laws and everyone just feels it's so dry. But being a legal instructor and and in law school, that's the stuff I geek out about.
Oh, sure.
So I try to make it as engaging as possible based on scenario-based training, right? I'll give them a scenario, or maybe I'll pull out, where's it at? Here you go. Or I'll pull out some type of aid to, training aid to be like, okay, if I'm just balling up my hands and saying, hey, I'm going to hurt you. Does that give you what you need in whatever state I'm teaching at that point in time to utilize your firearm? And then people start, oh, wait. And then I call on it, and then people start getting engaged. By the time I'm done, let's just say it's up in Maryland. By the time I'm done 4 hours of legal training, we can't move past legal because everyone just keeps asking more questions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What I like to do is I like to take real stories, and the couple of things that have happened in the last couple of months have been great. One of the things I talk about when I teach the Utah class is Utah doesn't let anyone, doesn't keep people's information. So you can't look on a database to see if somebody has a Utah permit. And I say the reason they did this is because after Sandy Hook, there was a newspaper in Westchester County in New York that said, hey, we're going to publish the names of the people who have gun licenses. And I said, this really does two things, and neither one of them are good. One thing it doesn't, that's ancillary, it gun shames people, which is ridiculous. But I say they're also telling people these are the houses you can break into to get some guns. And then after you break into the guns, these are the houses you can go into to take the rest of the stuff, And I've been using that since forever, since I started doing the Utah class. Well, now I can say 2 weeks ago, the state of California published all of the names of people who have carry permits in the state of California.
And said it was an accident.
It was an accident. Such nonsense.
Oh, my. And, if you or I did something like that, where we accidentally released people's information, we'd be in jail. There'd be a full-on investigation. We'd be in jail waiting for the investigation to clear unless we had some high-dollar lawyer that could get us out on bail. And it would be a $500,000 bail with an ankle monitor or something like that. But the state of California does it. It's an accident. Sorry about you.
Whoops. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous.
I read that article too. I was very infuriated. I've only lived in California for a brief time while in the military. And I say this, every state has its own beauty. Sometimes that's the actual state and not the people, but it has its own beauty sometimes, or every state does. I'm glad I don't live there anymore. We'll definitely put that out there. Not that there's anything wrong with California, except when it comes to gun laws. First time I went to California was last month. I went out to the San Diego County Gunners had an event called Gun Prom, and I was going out with my good friend John Petrolino, who writes for Bearing Arms and Ammo Land, and I got off the airplane. I'm like, he's like, hey, are you going to bring like a hoodie? I'm like, one, I don't own hoodies, but I have a long sleeve fleece. I'll bring that. I don't think we're going to need it, but I'm going to bring it. He's like, yeah, you should. I'm like, I don't think so, man. I got off the airplane. I walked out of the airport in San Diego. It's beautiful out. It was the whole time we were there, 5 days or something. It was between the upper 60s and lower 70s, and there was a breeze off the ocean. I walked out. I'm like, this is beautiful. I could live here. I can't own any ARs. I'm not staying. And if you do find a way to get around it, you're going to have some type of magazine that's bolted into the firearm that can't be removed. And
yes, so you live in free America. I live in occupied territory. I've heard about these. I refuse to buy one. I bought two of them over the weekend, but I saw this thing. I went and helped out at a ladies' event in the beginning of May, and they said, you're gonna, I'm going to end up taking ladies and have them. It was on the rifle range, and I had them shoot the ARs. I had this speed loader. It's about this long. It's like a long rectangle. You can put 10 rounds. You fix this in through the ejection port, and you push it down, and it loads all the rounds like it's nothing. And I was at a gun store in LA when I was out in California, and I said, hey, we're kindred spirits. Like, we both live in occupied territory. Have you seen these before? They're like, yeah, no, we've never heard of those. I'm like, I need to set you guys up with one, because these things are really cool. If you have to live in occupied territory and you have to be neutered, you probably want one of these.
So ironically, I saw, and I don't know if this is the same thing, I saw the same concept, was where it was just almost like pushing a clip into an old army rifle. Mm-hmm. And it was the same concept, and they literally were marketing it only to California, where it was something just like what you were just saying. Hey, are you in a communist state where you can't own a gun? And
right.
I was like, well, this caught my attention. Let me see what this ad is saying. And it was probably a YouTube ad or something like that, which is ironic that even YouTube would allow it. But this guy came out and he's like, hey, yeah, California requires you to have this non-detachable magazine. Well, we found a way around that. Here you go. You want 20 rounds or 10 rounds, whatever their magazine cap is. Here, you need 10 rounds to change out. Popped it in there. Popped another 10 in there. I'm like, dang, he's faster than some people I know with an actual 30-round magazine. I'm over here like, he's practiced that quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, hey, necessity breeds ingenuity.
Whenever the government puts restrictions on things, the market finds a way around it. I mean, listen, the 5 evil features of an assault weapon are a pistol grip, a collapsible stock, a flash hider, a bayonet lug, and a grenade launcher. And they found ways around all of these except the grenade launcher. You can't have a flash hider, but you can have a muzzle brake. What do? They do the same thing. One has a big hole, one has a small hole. This one's illegal, this one's okay. What? It's so stupid.
It's the irony of just the government does something so that they look good during election year, and it really has no positive impact. But anyway, we're going down the political realm. Let's break away from this. I want to kind of steer back. So you're teaching all these students, you're teaching classes all over the place, you're traveling all over the place. You're doing Riding Shotgun with Charlie. And as I said, you've had some big names on there. The one that I was geeking out about with you was Hickok 45. I watched that whole thing like 7 times. We don't have to talk about that. But anyway.
Did you see, I put out another little video where when I went down to Nashville, it snowed. It snowed. Everything was closed. Restaurants were closed. I went down with my daughter to visit a university for her. We're going to gas stations to get food. Like, it was bad. It was bad. It was so bad, the Waffle House was closed. Right?
That is bad.
That is bad. So anyway, I connected with Hickok. We ended up going out for breakfast at a Cracker Barrel, and we went and filmed the show. And I'm like, I'm coming from the Northeast. It snowed in Nashville. People are driving like crap. They don't know how to drive. The lady at the hotel, there's probably 2 inches of snow. And I get you're from the South. I hear you, but you've lived up almost north. And so the girl at the hotel, she's like, oh, I'm stuck here for 3 days. I'm like, why? And she's like, because of all the snow. I'm like, it's going to melt. Like, I asked Hickok, I'm like, what do you guys do about snow? He's like, we take the day off and let it melt. So I made this video. I said, hey, listen, you know what? I'm down here. It's snowing. It's Nashville. I want to give this to you. And I gave him a window scraper. And he's like, this is great. It was pretty fun, man.
It's one of those things. And to piggyback on that, I'm driving back from, I think it was somewhere up north. It might have been like New Jersey or Maryland or somewhere. And the way I come down is I shoot across, hit 81, come down that way. Well, that puts you into like Bristol, Tennessee. Well, I came in and it was snowing. And now Tennessee doesn't have state income tax, which 100% translates over to they don't have road maintenance. So
right.
Now I love Tennessee. I'm literally 20 miles from the state border. I'm in Tennessee all the time. Law school's in Tennessee, but I'm driving through Tennessee the brief little bit. It's snow everywhere, and I have an aluminum body pickup truck, so completely light in the ass end. I mean, it's just horrible. And I'm driving. I literally hit the state line of Tennessee and North Carolina. And North Carolina, it's snowing just as hard as Tennessee, but beautiful, clear roads and everything. Tennessee, they're just like, now I get to the state line, I'm literally following 20 salt trucks and plow trucks coming out. Tennessee, I've been driving the last 45 minutes. There's no one on the road. There's no trucks. So I'm 100% correlating no state taxes to no road maintenance with Tennessee right now. So,
well, I got to tell you, we pay a ton of money in taxes here in Massachusetts, and our roads suck as well.
Maybe I'm off on my assessment, but that's what I'm sticking with.
I don't know, man. I'll buy it. I'll buy it.
It sounds good for $1. So, all right. Circling back again one more time.
Right.
So you're doing all this training. You're working with these. You got Riding Shotgun with Charlie. You're making impacts. I mean, you got tens of thousands of views all over your social, just your YouTube channel, not to mention all your other social media outlets. And you're making impacts on people just by going out and discussing firearms with well-known individuals. You're picking their brain and you're putting out good content and good information for anyone at any level of training. Could be someone who just bought their first firearm or someone who's been training, their whole life, been through, say, law enforcement and the military. How's that make you feel when you're making that impact on those people?
I love it. I think everyone's got a story, and they're not different, but they're not the same. And I think we need to get everyone's story out about what finally happened for them, from when they went from being a gun agnostic to being pro-gun, or when they went from being an anti-gun person to they had something bad happen to them and they're like, holy crap, now I need to be pro-gun. And I think my attitude is if we can get those stories out to people, then that's going to bring more people in, because they'll be like, oh yeah, that happened to me. I hate using this term. I can identify with that. I would much rather say I relate to that, but people can relate to that. Oh, that guy, I used to do this. I was into that for a while. I know someone who does that. My sister does that. My brother does that. Those people seem like they're mate. They seem like they're us. They don't seem different than anyone else. And they're out there, they're pro-gun, and they carry, and they take training, and they take classes, and they go to events, and that's what it's like. That's what it's about. I want to get all these stories out. I had somebody tell me this, and it's not, when you're, it's not being able to see the tree through the forest. So I appreciate everything that you were saying. I don't see that I'm doing that. I see that I've got a show that I have to put out, and I got to film a show. And when I get down to like 3 or 4 shows, I start crapping my pants. I'm like, I got to go someplace. I got to get somebody on the show. Who do I have that's not too far? When can I go someplace? So to me, it's all, when's the next show? When's the next show? Where am I going next? Who can I have on the show? Who do I need to reach out to? How do I have to plan all that stuff? Which I dig and I like it. But after it's out there, okay, great. What's next? You know what I mean? So, I think it's great that it's making an impact on people, but I'm still, how do I keep this going? I want to keep this going. I like it when this is completely selfish. I like it when I go to events and people are like, oh yeah, you're the guy that's in the car, right? When I went to San Diego County Gun Owners, we sat at a table with, it was me and John Petrolino. It was this competitive shooter, Ursula Williams. It's in Phoenix. It's Rich Yumel, who's the Gun Owners radio show producer, and it's this other guy that's an instructor, and he's from Germany, and we're talking about all this stuff, and we're hanging out with him all night and telling stories, and everything's going really cool. And I had this little postcard I gave him. I said, hey, I got a show called Riding Shotgun with Charlie. I'd appreciate it if you check it out and check out my YouTube channel and subscribe and everything. He sent me a text message the next day. He's like, dude, I've seen 7 of your shows. I didn't put the 2 together. Like, I didn't know. And there's a very, very cool feeling that goes along with that.
Yeah.
It's a cool feeling.
I mean, having any type of correlation when it comes to that, I think anyone can relate in the sense of almost pride, where you made an impact. Someone recognized that impact, even though they didn't put it together right away. It's still the same point that they're just like, Charlie, wait,
exactly.
Oh,
right. This is you. I was at the NRA show, and I was handing out these postcards at the tables where people are eating. And I hand these out, and this guy says, "Oh, what's this?" I said, "Oh, I'm handing out some cards for this show called Riding Shotgun with Charlie." He's like, "Oh, I saw that show on AmmoLand. Hey, this is you. You're Charlie." "Yeah, I'm Charlie. I'm the guy that's handing out the cards as well as the guy that's doing everything else."
I'm a firm believer that, I mean, shy of like a really like just easily recognizable actor, you send a regular actor or actress through a crowded room with just normal clothes on, or not making any type of, they'll be able to walk right by somebody without them even, someone will eventually catch on, of course, but
Right.
but for the majority, they'll be able to walk. We're oblivious as Americans. I did a podcast with a private investigator who does domestic surveillance, and he was like, "Oh man, I can take off my hat and walk back in and follow someone for another 3 hours just by taking off my hat."
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, I've been following them for 3 hours one way, just wearing a hat, and I can go in there and just take off my hat and follow them another 3 hours. They would never recognize. So
unbelievable.
But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show. But once they have that connection and that correlation, they'll never forget it. I mean, they're probably telling that story tonight. Yeah, there's this one time I met the Charlie from Riding Shotgun with Charlie. But yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. From my standpoint, trying to get out and reach as many people as possible to promote personal and public safety, and running into someone like you and connecting with someone like you and having you on the show, it hits home to see that you and other people can reach out and actually make that larger impact across the, the firearms dynamic or world, I guess is what I'm getting at. So like I said, it's one of those things that really, really does make an impact, even if you're doing it for personal reasons. But hey, I think your
Right.
personal reasons aren't as selfish as you're making it sound.
Maybe not. I don't know. I always tell people I love my gig. Like I love it. I like doing the traveling. I all this stuff. It doesn't give me money, but it gives me all this other stuff that money can't buy, and that's what I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, no, I hear that 100%. So one thing that I want to ask you, and we're running a little behind on this one, but that's all right. One thing I want to ask you before we kind of do the whole wrap up and everything is, you're training often, you're training a lot of people, you're dealing with a lot of people in the fire. What's a tip you like to give to everyone when it comes to training? Just one hot tip you really like to hit people with.
I don't think. I think everyone needs to dry fire, and I'm certainly going to be a hypocrite and say that I don't do it enough either. Everyone needs to do it. My own sister called me up. My older sister bought a gun a couple months ago, and she's like, "What's this dry firing stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh, you got to do it." And she's like, "Well, what is it?" I'm like, "It's this." And side alignment, trigger squeeze, pressing the trigger. It's all this mechanical stuff that you need to do every time that you're shooting. And she's like, "Oh, is this why, having the gun recoil, have the gun bang? Is this why like the first 3 or 4 shots are really good, and then after that everything's low and left?" Yeah, that's what it is. So I'm a big fan of dry firing. When I first got into it, I religiously went downstairs when the wife and the kids were sleeping, and I would go downstairs with a cup of coffee, and I would go dry fire for a cup of coffee in the basement.
Yeah,
and I had a big Smith & Wesson model 19 357 Magnum with revolver with a 6-inch barrel, and I'd go downstairs and dry fire with that baby, and I love that gun.
Man, that is a shoulder workout right there. I'm literally looking at our virtual range right over here, which is, as we were discussing previously, which is where we do all our dry fire training. But you, for every episode we've had, that's pretty much been the tip that we've got. So I'm going to go ahead. Go ahead.
No, keep going.
I was just going to say, I'm going to go ahead and tell everyone who's listening, if you don't believe in it at this point, having, Charlie from Riding Shotgun with Charlie tell you that, out of everyone he's talked to, I can't get through to you at this point.
So I got a fun dry fire story. I got a phone call from somebody, and he's asking me questions, and then he finally comes out and says, "I've been a cop for 15 years. I went through the academy. I learned how to shoot there. I'm not really a gun guy. I did my qualification, and I really didn't do very well. Can you work with me?" I said, "Absolutely, absolutely." So we go to the range. I got some 45 ACP dummy rounds. And I said, "What gun are you shooting?" He's like, "We're shooting Smith & Wesson M&Ps and 45. Cool, I'll get some dummy rounds." We go to the range. 15 minutes into it, he's shooting low and left. And he's like, I don't really know what's going on. I'm not sure it's the gun. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm like, dude, you're flinching. He's like, what? I'm like, you're flinching. He's like, I don't know about this. Load the magazine. I did the ball and dummy trick, live rounds and dummies and live rounds and dummies. We got this bang, bang, click. That's what it is, man.
What happened?
Right? Well, the gun didn't go off. It didn't go off because it wasn't supposed to go off. So for 3 boxes of ammo, 4 boxes of ammo, whatever it was, for the next hour and 40 minutes, all I did was load magazines for this guy, and he didn't know when it was going bang and click. 6 months later, I'm at a store. This guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, are you Charlie Cook? Yes. Like, who wants to know? And he's like, look, I'm the police officer that you took shooting a few months ago, and I've been doing dry firing, and it really helps. I'm like, there you go, man. This is why we tell people to do it.
Can you write that on a review and put it on the website?
Right.
I was telling you before, I'm a virtual instructor, our 300-degree simulator for law enforcement. I will say this, and this is not, I love all my brothers and sisters in blues, but the number one reason I would put an officer on suspension is because they failed their pistol qual. And
sure.
It would happen at least to one officer biannually running. And we weren't a large agency. We were a mid-level agency, about 60 officers, but at least one officer, biannually, I would have to put on suspension because they would fail their pistol qual. Finally, it got to the point where I said, we have this $250,000 machine. I can record you shooting, and I can jam your gun from inside the tower because I can remote jam it. So I'm like, okay. So what I would do is, because that gun is actually, it's real guns converted over to CO2 canisters and lasers. Great concept. I took that and winded up jamming their guns. And I did this to every single person who was shooting low and left, or low and right if they were left-handed. And press, click. And I'm like, you dipped your gun. They're like, no, what happened? The gun broke. I'm like, it didn't broke. I did that. It didn't break. I did that. There we go. Get it together. And then they're like, no. So then I bring them back in the tower, replay it. And they're like, oh, is that what I'm doing every single time? I'm like, why does it take a video for you guys to believe this stuff? It drives me insane. But
it's nuts. And so when my sister bought her gun, I did the good little doobie, and I do this for, my closest friends and my family. When they buy a gun, I buy them dummy rounds, I buy them spare magazines, and I get them a book. And I bought my sister a speed loader as well. But I said, look, welcome to the family, welcome to the gun family. Here's some stuff you're going to need. Here's a book that's going to further your gun education and bring you more into the fold. And I've done this for one sister and probably 3 or 4 friends. And I'm like, look, this is how I express that I care for you. This is important to me. I like this. I think this is cool. I think maybe you'll like it. I think you need to learn how to do all this stuff. And here's some things that are going to be good for you to have. So do this.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you on every aspect of what you just said. I should probably steal that and start buying some. But then again, I could also just give them access to some of our training videos as well. So
that's even better.
Maybe I'll do that and then get them to dummy and laser training routes. So
absolutely.
My last question for you for the evening is how, to everyone listening out there, how important is training if you're going to be someone who carries a firearm? So
we recently had this shooting at the food court at a mall in Indiana. I'm going to say most people probably couldn't pull that off. I guarantee you're not going to be able to pull that off if you're not dry firing, and if you're not practicing, and if you're not getting to the range. And the reason that we do all this stuff is not because we're crazy lunatics. The reason we do this is because if we have to do it, we are going to have to do it. You can't have misses. If someone's holding your daughter hostage, you have one shot to take to stop that person. Oh my gosh, I had Claude Werner on the show. I interviewed him down outside of Atlanta, And he said, what's the scariest shot you're going to have to take? And he said, people all the time will say some, big buff 6'4" guy that looks like the Terminator, that's got guns and knives and machetes. And he's like, no, that's not the scariest thing. The scariest thing is having to shoot a terrorist that's a bad guy that's got a knife to your daughter's neck. You have one shot to take, and you have to make it count. And this is why we practice, and this is why we train, and this is why we get this education, of course, to hope that we don't have to. But if we do, you have to get a 100% on that sort of a shooting drill. Like it's one shot, and either you take it or you could possibly lose a family member. So put some time into training, get some education. Books are free. I mean, I am a big library geek. I wish I liked reading more than I like buying, or liked reading books more than I like buying books. But read. It's people have Kindles, people have digital books. There's books online. There's all sorts of stuff. And if you don't, I don't want to say you don't have to spend money on live fire training, but you need to educate yourself.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's probably the most valuable thing that anyone can learn from any instructor is, hey, training matters. I just ran through the Mantis Laser Academy pistol course today, and that is 100-round course, or just shy of 100-round course. And I shot a 97 percentile, which means I need to improve 3%.
Absolutely.
And I think you find any instructor out there looks at that and smiles. And any good instructor looks at that and smiles, says, "Oh, there's room for improvement." So,
absolutely.
So, but listen, Charlie, thank you for coming on. Before I let you go, where can everyone find you? Where can they look you up? And what's a couple things you got coming up that people can look forward to?
All right. Well, you can find everything Riding Shotgun at ridingshotgunwithcharlie.com. I've got a YouTube channel where you can watch the videos. You can also watch the videos on Gunstreamer, on Full30, and on the OpsLens app. I put the audio out as a podcast, so you can listen to the show if you like. You can download that on all your favorite podcast places, iHeartRadio and Spotify and Google Music. And I just put a show out with Joe Dramisi, who's an instructor in California. I interviewed Evan Knappen, who's he's a gun attorney out of New Jersey, but he practices up in New Jersey and in New Hampshire. And I got to interview him up in Concord, New Hampshire, and he was a lot of fun. I put out a show with Santi from Santi TV in Houston. She was really cool. And she was, what was fun with me for her is she started stalking me, and then she emailed me, and she's like, "Hey, what if you're ever in Houston, come on down. I want to be on the show." So I have that. I have some shows that I filmed out in California. I have one more show from the NRA annual meetings in Texas, and I'm actually going to Detroit the end of July, and I'm going to film some shows in Detroit. So it's my attitude is, if anytime I have to go someplace that's gun related or not gun related, I'm going to find someone that I can interview and get a show out of them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Everything's content at that point. So listen,
oh my gosh,
we will have all those links in the description below, and that's both on the audio podcast and here on YouTube if you're watching the video. Charlie, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. This was great. I appreciate your time, bud, and thanks for having me.
No problem. I will talk to you soon.